Greetings, everybody. A very warm welcome to all of you to our breakout session on the COPs for Dev research. In the past 6 years, the International Cooperative Alliance and its regional offices undertook a number of research activities with an aim to strengthen the cooperative movement and contribute to a growing body of knowledge in the field of cooperative development. While we completed 4 global researches on legal frameworks, mapping key figures, youth in cooperatives, and the recently launched Cooperatives and Green Economy, each ICA region also undertook thematic research studies at regional level. The themes were selected by each region as per topical issues and subjects relevant for cooperatives in Europe, Americas, Africa, Asia Pacific, respectively. In this session, we aim to showcase a glimpse of our research activities through the album on some of our greatest research hits. This is done with an aim to start a dialogue on how to put this vast knowledge to practice and build upon the established foundations. We hope you take an active part in this session, for it is with your support only that we can hope to build on this vast knowledge. We would like to lay down a few house rules before we begin. We request everyone to keep their mics on mute during an ongoing session. You may choose to keep your cameras on. In the open discussion, you may switch on your mics for comments or queries. We also encourage the participants to actively interact in the chat box during the session, and we thank you in advance for maintaining the house rules. We will now commence with the first session on 10 greatest research hits that we are very proud to present before you. I am joined by my colleagues from all ICA regions, Ms. Ines Sege, Mr. Jeffrey Moxon, Mr. Melvin Kabenje, and Mr. Carlos Gonzalez, and our colleagues and dear friends from Cooperative College UK, Dr. Sarah Aldred and Dr. Amanda Benson. I now invite Jeffrey to introduce himself and set the scene for this musical saga. Sit back and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Simran. What a pleasure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeffrey. I'm the research coordinator at the ICA and a member of the research team here for the ICA-EU Partnership. And one thing I will say for those who would like to have interpretation into Spanish, that is available for this breakout session on research, and you can access it in the same way as you did for the opening session if you were there just a few minutes ago. So down at the bottom bar there, you can click on interpretation and select your chosen language. So yeah, what a way to kick off. And I think just to try to celebrate and to showcase to you some of the research work that's been achieved over the course of the 5.5 years of the ICA Partnership. So we're going to have a little kind of top 10 greatest hits, final countdown that you can see on the screen here as my colleague Melvin very kindly shares the slides. So we're going to do a little sort of top 10 album countdown, and I would like to kick off with the first track, actually, which is about our statistical research on mapping and specifically the need for data. So if we could have the next slide, please. So really what an introductory track of an album should do is set the scene, and I think much like the birth of a cooperative enterprise itself, our research on the mapping was set in motion by people coming together to meet an important need. And I think the quote on the slide sets out that need, that there was really a lack of reliable information on the cooperative landscape, and that this for us was quite a major challenge. So really our mapping research was aiming to collect exhaustive, consistent and reliable and comparable data on the co-op situation and the co-op landscape in different regions and countries where the ICA has members. So to try to quantify really this cooperative difference. And this came at a time when there's an emerging interest really on statistics. For example, you have the International Conference of Labour Statisticians and organisations such as the International Labour Organization and COPAC as a body who have prepared different documents around statistics. So we want to contribute to that process really, and we're aiming to have something very member-centered, high quality and ideally quite impact-orientated research, focusing on our members and in member countries. And that information is quite important for the success of the other activities which are going on within the partnership, which we've heard some of that about it today, really. And I think it's important to say that much of these activities, they are interlinked, and that having good data on co-ops is supporting that whole process to go forward. So we know that co-ops are very important. They have a big impact in societies in which they're in, but how do we actually quantify that? So this research was trying to support the advocacy efforts for a better enabling environment for cooperatives. So for the next slide, we could just look at what was completed in this field. So we completed 66 national reports, which is a large coverage. It's over 50% of the countries where the ICA has its members. That provides us with a great foundation for future work on statistics, hopefully to support the ICA's efforts there. And also I think we've learned a great deal on overcoming some of the challenges we experienced while we had conducted that statistical research. Things such as gaps in the data, how to get good responses and response rates, and how to have data that is somehow comparable. So we learned many lessons that we can take forward, trying to communicate the impact of the co-op movement. Because as I mentioned, without this good data, we cannot really demonstrate the cooperative difference to policymakers and to the wider public. So it's really looking at how we might apply the mapping results to our future activities, either in a future FPA or in other activities. And with this, I close track 1, and I'd like to pass over to the presenter of track 2.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey. Let's take our audience through the legal and policy environment for cooperatives now. And welcome, Carlos, over to you.
Thank you, Simran. And just to give everybody a heads up, I'm going to speak in Spanish as I come from the Americas. So if you want to hear me in English, just please remember to select the English language in the lower bar of Zoom, the icon that says interpretation. Please select English as I'm going to speak in Spanish. We can pass the slide, Melvin. Ok, el análisis de marcos legales fue desarrollado en todas las regiones con la intención de proveer al cooperativismo global de una base común. En muchos casos no sabemos cuáles son las realidades que enfrentan las cooperativas en términos legales alrededor del mundo, e inclusive en nuestros países vecinos. Entonces, para nosotros fue sumamente importante poder brindar a todas las cooperativas y en especial a nuestros miembros esas herramientas para poder comparar sus condiciones con las condiciones que tienen las cooperativas alrededor del mundo. Pero no queríamos solo brindarles una herramienta para compararse a las cooperativas, sino para que también las cooperativas tuvieran voz sobre sus marcos legales. Entonces, también tuvimos una participación muy activa por parte de nuestros miembros. Por ejemplo, en las Américas, ellos participaron desde el proceso de selección del experto que redactaba estos informes de marcos legales. Ellos nos brindaban una recomendación. Mira, para Costa Rica te recomiendo a fulanito, para Colombia te recomiendo a Juan y para Argentina te recomiendo a Pedro. Desde ese punto, nuestras cooperativas empezaban ese proceso de participación activa en la redacción de los informes. Pero también tuvieron una participación en cuanto a lo que era la retroalimentación, el feedback, porque una vez que el experto redactaba esos informes de marcos legales, nosotros compartíamos el informe con nuestras asociadas en sus respectivos países para que ellos dieran esa retroalimentación. Mira, Carlos, hace falta A, hace falta B, deberíamos modificar C, etc. Toda esta retroalimentación la íbamos adquiriendo por parte de ellos. Asimismo, el principal material que tenía el experto para redactar los informes era una encuesta que llenaban también nuestras cooperativas asociadas. Entonces, brindaban retroalimentación, pero al mismo tiempo eran la principal fuente de información. Entonces vemos una participación muy activa por parte de nuestras organizaciones miembros. A nivel de los resultados y lo que yo le llamo en el papel, fue que obtuvimos una gran cantidad de informes de marcos legales. En realidad superamos nuestras expectativas. Llegamos casi al centenar de informes, pasamos los 50 fácilmente. Y eso nos ha permitido tener esos informes. Muchos, tanto en español como en inglés, algunos otros inclusive están hasta en francés. La página web donde tienen los informes está en los 3 idiomas, entonces la gente puede acceder fácilmente a estos resultados. Pero también nos parece sumamente importante pasar del papel a la práctica. ¿Cómo logramos que esos informes no fueran solo un documento PDF que está en línea? Pues bien, en las Américas lo que hicimos fue una serie de actividades subregionales donde los expertos que redactaron los informes participaban de un panel exponiendo sus principales resultados, pero el público en general también brindaba sus opiniones sobre ese informe y sobre la materia legal en general. Entonces, hubo un proceso de intercambio muy valioso que hemos realizado ya tanto para América del Sur, América Central y el Caribe. Todavía estamos pendientes para realizarlo en América del Norte, pero que ha tenido un éxito enorme porque nos ha permitido reajustar algunos aspectos, considerar nuevas temáticas que deberíamos estar investigando dentro de los marcos legales, y creo que abre también un nuevo aspecto a considerar, que es también el tema de políticas públicas, no solo el marco legal, sino también cómo la política pública va guiando y afectando de alguna manera el desarrollo de las cooperativas. Muchas gracias por el espacio, Simran.
So moving on to track 3 of our top 10 greatest hits, taking the LFA a step further and going to the regional analysis. If I could move on to the next slide, please. So basically, this is a bit of a regional reports mix. All 4 ICA regional offices produced a regional analysis of the legal frameworks that Carlos has just so well described. In Africa, in Americas, and in Asia Pacific, which due to its large geographic diversity and size, divided the region into 6 sub-regions, and there's 6 sub-regional reports there on the legal frameworks, and also in Europe. So these reports outline the general legal context at regional level and give an overview of the regional level legislation if it's there, but also a summary of the national reports that were covered across the region. So if we could jump to the next slide, what information is in there? So really what these reports try to do is to kind of look at the commonalities and the differences among the countries with respect to the different areas that were covered within the national reports. So whether that's how a cooperative is defined or how you set up a cooperative, within the law, the governance structure or the financial structure or taxation, or other specific features such as cooperation among cooperatives or audit practices, for example. It gives a bit of a view of the kind of spectrum of laws that are in place amongst the regions. So for example, maybe in one country, a cooperative may not be defined at all within the law, or in another, the ICA's definition of a cooperative might be within the law, word for word. So we can kind of a little bit see there where we stand and where we might need to try to get to. So if we could jump to the next slide, what that really helps us to do, as Carlos has mentioned, is taking that to the regional level, outline some major trends that influence the law and look to see if we can provide recommendations. It gives us a good basis for comparability of the co-op law. And that can support our efforts for policy and advocacy for any legislative reform, and a little bit what Marlene Holzler mentioned in the opening session about trying to build members' capacity to act at national level. The ICA is kind of developing its capacity to provide support on these very important issues. And also maybe to look at whether there's any existence or possibility for supranational legislation. Would that be necessary, or would it maybe be more important to focus on changes at the national level? And then also just to provide a bit of info on some of the best practices or some of the things that might inspire in a particular country, maybe for other countries in the same region, to look at how they might improve their enabling environment for co-ops. So a lot of things there. And these are forthcoming. They'll be released very soon, the 4 regional reports. So it's something to look out for, and we'll probably do some promotion on that. I'd like to stop there for track 3 and pass the floor. Thank you, Simran.
For track 4, I invite Melvin.
Yes, thanks, Simran. Thanks, Jeff, for that presentation. I'm sure we'll all agree, for every musical collection, it won't be great if we don't have some form of collabs. So for track 4, we'll be looking at some very useful collaborations we've been able to work with through the influence of some of the findings from the research work. So the policy and advocacy impacts. There's been quite a few, but I'll just be highlighting 2 of the most recent ones, work we've done. So the first one is the model law on cooperative societies for Africa. As most of us might have an idea, model law basically is just a guide for adoption and revision for national laws. So earlier this year, based on the LFA reports, the African ones to be specific, which was used mainly to propose a model law on cooperative societies for Africa, and this was submitted to the Pan-African Parliament. This is a parliament in South Africa for all African member states to discuss issues and challenges affecting citizens in the region. So this model law aims to be a guideline in developing and reviewing cooperative legislation within the continent. Like from the LFA reports, we realized there are quite a number of issues with the legislation, to name a few, like the political interference, inadequate laws, mismanagement, etc., which you could find from the LFA findings. So these are some of the things that we're framing, try to give a guide for countries even considering reviewing their respective national cooperative laws. The target was actually for it to be presented during the sit-in in August, but for unforeseen situation, the Parliament didn't even actually add their sit-in in August, but these draft model law will be presented in their next sit-in, hopefully soon. The second one was the input made on this year's UN Secretary General's report. So ICA was contacted by UNDESA to collaborate in providing expert input to the report. So most of these findings, not only from the research, but also from our other COPS for Dev activities, were used in terms of making contributions to this report. For example, some of the questions for the consultation included like the overall character of cooperative laws in different regions, the main challenges cooperatives face in the interface with the law, and some of the areas for improvement. So as a contribution to this aforementioned report, consultation was done within our members and even with the different various regional offices. So this is just two key ways we've been able to collaborate with 2 important other organizations, as you could testify by in the person of the UN and the Pan-African Parliament. Over to you, Simran.
Thanks a lot, Melvin, and that's really amazing. And I'm sure it was nothing less than heavy metal, what we just went through. And after this rock and roll overview, let's now talk a bit more about the impact of cooperatives on people. I now invite Sarah and Amanda to present a duet on youth and peace. Over to you, Sarah and Amanda.
Thanks, Imran. And I'm absolutely loving this musical track analogies. So what me and Amanda are going to do, we're going to mix some tracks now. So And we're going to talk about the importance of partnerships. So on to the next slide, please. So yeah, just as an overview in terms of the collaborative work that we've been involved with. So the college has been involved with the Cooperative Development Platform, and also, and that was really from 2012 to 2015. And this is just a slide just to show the range of collaborative research work that we did as part of that very early, the first three to 4 years as part of the European platform. So for example, we did some publications on best practice case studies across Latin America and also across Africa. And we also did a partnership research publication as well. And then also, you know, we've been part of producing the Corpus and Peace publication, which Amanda's going to talk to. And also the youth research. So next slide, please. Thank you. And yeah, sorry, my voice is going actually, but just to say something a little bit about the second piece of the second partnership that emerged as the Cooperative Development Platform. That really was part of an EU framework partnership agreement between the ICA and all the regional offices. And that was and that brought together all the four main offices to do a whole range of activities. And the aim was to strengthen the cooperative movement's capacity to promote international development. And it focused very much on knowledge building, visibility and advocacy activities. And there's been a range of thematic lenses, which me and Amanda will talk about, and also the previous slide indicated. And yeah, just there again, just a shout out to the Cooperative Development Platform, which is where this all the kind of partnership emerged from very early on. And that started very much as a volunteer group of European partners who wanted to work in cooperative development, and that like became more formalized when it was funded. So I'm now going to hand over to Amanda. I suggested that we both sing these tracks, but we decided against it. So Amanda's now just going to talk through the piece research.
Oh yes. Next slide, please, Melvin. And I mean, the sort of overarching theme of a lot of this work with cooperatives, to use the analogy of being a duet, it's to move us on from being islands in the stream, as in Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. And in this relationship with Sarah and myself, I think I'll choose to be Kenny. So just to talk about the cooperatives and peace research that we carried out. This was conducted in 2018. And it was a really sort of far-reaching piece of research that was put together across the whole partnership. And we used a case study approach. And what we intended to do with this research was to provide real good, solid, evidence-based research to sort of show what cooperatives do for peace building and peace strengthening. And it wasn't just about looking at cooperatives who are working in the field of peace. It was about looking at cooperatives who are doing work in various different sectors and regions to see how the cooperative form itself can contribute to helping peace building and peace strengthening. So it wasn't just like really focused on those regions or on those sort of sectors where you would normally think that you would find those peace building activities. It was also to show how cooperatives can be instruments for change, because we often talk, don't we, about the cooperative difference, but sometimes it's really hard to find tangible examples that we can use. And so in order to be able to produce these recommendations for European institutions and to also show, you know, to show partners and to attract more kind of funding and research and support for cooperative development, you know, it's really important to have that really, really solid evidence and be able to say, yes, we can show this cooperative difference. But also, as Sarah previously mentioned as well, the Cooperatives Europe Development Platform, it was also an excellent opportunity for the different partners to work together to showcase not only their expertise in the field of cooperative development, but also to kind of bring some of the partners that they work with in the field to the fore by using case studies that come from those different regions. Next slide, please, Melvin. So the background to the research, we know that there's lots of different research out there that already shows that cooperatives do have a contribution to make to peace and peace building. In fact, there's two very good books by Ian Macpherson, which, you know, have got lots of different stories and examples. But what we wanted to do was find a little bit more evidence, and also sort of in this context and in this policy context, to come up with recommendations that we could use through this ICA-EU framework. And also to focus on, you know, a cooperative approach to the research, and to take it out through all of the ICA regions. So we actually had 20 case studies from across the different regions. And the key themes which came out of the research were inequalities, looking at economic inclusion, also women's empowerment, how we could create spaces for dialogue through cooperation, and also how, you know, environmental sustainability, how, you know, important like peace and cooperation was to environmental sustainability as well. And in this research, we mapped all of the different case studies against the SDGs and which SDGs came up the most. And so the most recurrent SDGs, you can see from the illustration, were 1, 5, 8, 10, 12, 13, 16, and 17. Now, of course, you know, as with any sort of project, you know, you find that you can kill many birds with one stone, as you say, and it's the same with the SDGs. So, you know, these were just the ones that came up in the main. Next slide, please, Melvin. So the key findings from this research, it showed that, you know, empowering minority groups affected by conflict. So what cooperatives did was they gave people space to come together, and for people to work together. And it also gave a louder voice to those minority groups that had previously been affected by conflict. And we found that in areas such as Bosnia-Herzegovina and also Rwanda, where, you know, the cooperative itself, by working together, enabled people to sort of come to new understandings, and also to develop relationships as communities. And because they were focused on the business of the cooperative, it meant that, you know, a lot of those sort of issues or conflicts were kind of put to one side, or they were worked through by people being in a shared space where they had a common goal. I mean, it also meant that rather than people having to have conflict over scarce resources, that people were able to work together to provide decent livelihoods. And it also meant that by people working together cooperatively, they were able to much better safeguard their local resources and have better stewardship over local resources, which meant there was less likelihood for there to be conflict over resources. And another thing was around anchor organizations working in some of these communities that are struggling with conflict, which is not necessarily internal conflicts, but external conflicts. So, for example, refugee communities, or where there's been a war and people are displaced. So the act of cooperating between different organizations meant that these partnerships, these regional partnerships, were enabled, you know, to be strengthened. And it also meant that there was better collaboration and cooperation to get better humanitarian support on the ground. So those were our key findings from the research. So I'm now going to pass back over to Dolly Parton for the second part of our duet.
Thanks, Kenny Rogers. Okay, so yeah, so the other piece of research we've been asked to talk about, which was the Young People and Cooperatives, A Perfect Match, which was launched in March this year as part of the Global Youth Forum conference. Next slide, please, Melvin. And yeah, this is as Amanda was very much focusing on the Cooperative Development Platform research, which is the piece. This one's very much the wider ICA-EU Partnership publication. And the publication was very much a huge, I mean, it was a huge collaborative project, really. So it was across it was brought together across all the ICA regional offices, and the college played a role in terms of, you know, offering support along with the ICA Youth Network. So the next slide, please. So yeah, the three objectives for this, really, for the research, were to provide clear insights on the key challenges facing young people from the perspective of the young peoples themselves. And it's just worth noting what some of those challenges were, which are actually in the report. So, you know, one of the things that we put in the report was that 90% of young people actually live in developing countries. And underemployment also and unemployment are a key issue for young people. So a lot of, you know, young people are probably overeducated for the actual jobs that are available. There's an experience trap for young people. So, you know, your employers often say, well, we need you to have some work experience, but how do those young people actually get that work experience? That was another thing. In work poverty as well is another issue. That's definitely an issue in the UK and across Europe as well. So the wages don't match the kind of pressures of, you know, rent and bills and that kind of thing. And that decline in the value of tertiary education as opposed to higher ed, really, and those actual labour skills that are actually needed for the market. And then another one of the findings that we found was for young women in particular, so yes, it's challenge for young people, but then the added layer of that is that young women in that group tend to have a further disadvantage, really. So next slide, please. Okay, so this was based on direct input of young people across 20 countries. So this was as we've been trying to push, it's a very much a collaborative thing, you know, and it was across the 4 ICA regions. So, for example, Kenya, Morocco, Eswatini, Argentina, Costa Rica, Denmark, Greece, Uganda, India, Philippines, a whole range. I mean, it's a fantastic collaboration of the views of young people across those regions. It was organised into 5 chapters, and the 5 key focus areas really that emerged from the research. So they did the research first, and then the thematics came out of those findings for the report. So the focus areas were employment, there were education, there were inequality, engagement and civic participation, and entrepreneurship. And overall, we got 420 responses for the young people, which was great. So that was a lot of data for the researchers to actually work with. And so yeah, so 420 responses from young people collected and analysed for research, and which surveyed both young cooperators and young people. So it wasn't just young people in cooperatives, but it was just young people in community. So it's a real blended mix of young people's views. So next slide, please. So yeah, so the report really kind of demonstrates that cooperatives, you know, play a crucial role in solving the challenges of young people, and that's you know, this is very much a whistle-stop tour. So I really do advise to actually go and get yourself immersed in the report. Whilst also contributing to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, in particular SDG 8, which was on decent work, and also SDG 4, which is on quality education. And yeah, and I just want to spend I think it's the last slide on key recommendations. So, so based on all this research, you know, across all these countries with amazing and a high number of young people, the 7 recommendations were: improve knowledge, so support education and knowledge building on cooperatives. So that was, you know, the what of cooperatives. So, you know, a lot of young people didn't actually know what a cooperative was, but also the how of doing that education. So using a really interesting, you know, using cooperative education pedagogy, so using very much a collaborative approach to get young people learning, with the overarching premise that knowledge is power. So, you know, give that knowledge to young people and they will get engaged in co-ops. The second one was just boost the image of cooperatives, and do that through, you know, trying to bridge that digital divide, you know, and use digital technology, because a lot of young people are actually engaged in digital technology. So use digital technology to improve and to disseminate the knowledge of cooperatives. So develop structure. So that's build genuine youth orientated cooperative structures. So yeah, and that's just get young people involved with the decision making at all levels of cooperatives. Therefore, if they feel as though they've got an engagement in the cooperatives, they'll actually stay and get passionate about co-ops. Build culture, so linked to structure, just within cooperatives, create cultural structures, create spaces, do events, make cooperatives implicit spaces where people actually come together, not just for the essential things of business, but also to get to know each other, to actually talk about what's going on in the community, and also have some fun, make it interesting, engaging and fun for young people to be involved with. Linking back to strengthening partnerships, work constructively with other organisations to achieve common goals. And that doesn't mean just, so yes, obviously work with other cooperatives, but also work beyond cooperatives, work in your community. So as part of this publication, we mentioned there's a whole range of case studies. So one of the case studies is one that we use, which is the Youth Cooperative Action. And that's about actually using partnerships with, your local authorities, other youth organisations which aren't necessarily cooperatives, but they have similar values and they can add value to strengthen that partnership. Nearly finished. So promote decent work and employment. So there again, make it attractive and also link it to SDG 8. This is everything we're talking about here is about livelihoods. Really, it's about giving people a better access to good and decent work so they can flourish. And finally, an advanced and enabling environment. So work to create an enabling environment for cooperatives and youth cooperative entrepreneurship. And that was talked about earlier in the previous tracks on legal frameworks. So me and Amanda have just pulled a few questions. We're going to go on to the next track, but some questions we had when we were thinking through. So the next slide, Melvin. So really, it's just having a think, really, so we can have a discussion later, is, what are the key components of really good collaborative research? So what, so there's a typo there, but what are the benefits? And what does each partner gain from collaboration? We have to gain from this as well, so what is it that each partner gains? So thank you for letting us sing our tracks, Melvin, and it's over to the next slide.
Yes, so back to me. Without being biased, we know African music gives us upbeat. So we had to include a showcase from Africa for one of the thematic research. So I'll take you through the one we did on review of existing ICT uptake in cooperatives in Africa. This actually was a very intense research. I didn't personally take part in it, but it was done by our colleagues and in partnership with African Prudential, which is well known for providing business solutions. On these, a few results came out from this research work. I will try to briefly go through them. So as anticipated or expected from the review, we found out that the uptake of technology is very low within the continent. We realized mainly it was cooperatives were operating under manual operation for their administration work and data collection. And there are so many unconventional ways people do data management, which as you would imagine, is not as effective. So this research work tries to promote that the diffusion of ICT will accelerate the COP management in general and even capacity development and knowledge generation. Some of the findings that I've found interesting from the reports, for example, even like with the ICT utilization, we realized by sub-regions, there are 5 sub-regions in Africa. We saw that East Africa, for example, is the highest in terms of utilization, which was about 34.7%, and the lowest actually was from Central Africa Republic, which was 13%. And the study illustrated that ICT will improve the image the image of cooperative movements. It will facilitate cooperatives to score higher in transparency and accountability. I'm sure there's a lot of literature around this where one of the main challenges within the movement is like the issue about transparency and keeping members or the management accountable and making sure that members are well informed. So with the implementation of usable ICT in all tiers, not just probably in the apex bodies, but from all tiers right down to like primary cooperatives, it will be easy. It will help in terms of executive management, for example, and general data management, like I mentioned. So this study was done in line with what we mentioned about partnership. This was done with the African Prudential, which really the aim is not only to, like after compiling these reports that has been published for a while now, but now also it's also to conceptualize some of the major recommendations that were made and actually get a system that could be used by the cooperative movement itself, an ICT system, which I'll get into soon. So some of the major recommendations from the report, as I mentioned about the system, is the development of CRIMS. CRIMS basically is the Cooperative Resource Information Management System. The idea of this will have different modules. So like for membership modules, corp management modules, finance modules, procurement modules, these could all be formed together so that the cooperative members will be able to use the system coined as the CRIMS. A second recommendation was to develop an application around mobile phones to address the heterogeneous placement of members. This also has been an issue within the movement. The third one was that national federations should provide periodic ICT training for members and affiliates. This could also even be an income generating activity for the cooperative members. And the last one recommendation was actually that ICA to formulate policies that will facilitate the adoption of ICT by members. Just to wrap up also, you could, from the report, it was also interesting that some of the barriers why ICT uptake is a challenge within the continent were brought up. There are quite a number, but maybe just to name a few, these include the lack of ICT knowledge, even lack of awareness and potential benefits for the management team, and also even realizing the relevance of ICT, so the inability to identify ICT relevance. With this, I think I should hand over back to Simran.
Thank you, Melvin. That was very insightful and indeed an amazing overview of the co-op impact. Let us now see how the cooperative impact is best told through stories and through platforms. So I invite Jeffrey to share with us some of the events that we've taken part in.
Thank you so much, Simran. I think it's something we often hear as researchers, that we should try not to just have the research to sit on the shelf. And I think it's a challenge for all of us of how we do that. So the events and conferences were really a good opportunity for us as the research team to put some of the work we've done out there. And why? I mean, on the next slide, I just put a couple of points out there. I mean, really, we try to actively promote the work in different regional global forums and conferences. And this is great for building networks in which the co-op movement can share knowledge and build knowledge, and try to connect a little bit more the cooperative research community, which is vast and diverse as well, and in which we have practitioners and academics and so forth. So really about how we can get to know each other and the work that we are doing a little bit better. And the ICA's role as a guardian of the cooperative principles and values is also promoting those actively. So, and within the partnership itself, that's sort of focused around really an international development mandate. So our work is very much focused on the development impact of cooperatives in particular, but not only, of course. And just, yeah, how we can communicate that better to our members, to stakeholders and partners and policymakers. I think it's really, really important. So on the next slide, you can see a little bit just about some of the high, top moments, high moments for the research team in support of these things. Some of you may have heard of the Global Youth Forum. So there we launched our youth research. The 2021 edition was online, but the previous edition in 2020 was held in Kuching in Malaysia. And there we held a research and knowledge building workshop with young people to talk about our research as well. And also to talk to these participants a little bit about what they felt were some interesting topics for future research, which perhaps we can get on into the discussion. There's a few listed there. I won't go through all of them. The Cooperative College Centenary in 2019 in Rochdale was a great moment to be there and to present the peace report. So as a big shout out to Sarah and Amanda there. We were active across the pond in Canada to talk about our youth research at the Canadian Association for Cooperative Studies conferences, and also around the ICA's own conferences. So the General Assembly at Kigali in 2019, we launched the online platform, which we'll hear a little bit about in a moment. And a big moment for us at the European level is the European Development Days, where a lot of development practitioners come from all over the world to here in Brussels. And we often did some presentations there around our research, but also policy activities as well. And for those of you who may not know, the ICA has a cooperative committee on research, and each year they are holding their own conferences at regional level in different parts of the world. So these are really great moments to connect also with cooperators and cooperative researchers and present some of the work. So we're grateful also to all of the people who are participating and putting a lot of time and effort into building this research community. So with that, maybe we can hit to track 9. I'll pass the floor.
Hello, thanks, Jeff. Hello, so me, as a communication officer, I'm presenting our website, copsfordev.com, which is actually a very important platform to showcase all research work. And well, you can go maybe to next slide, Melvin. Thanks. Yeah, just as an introduction, you must probably have already visited this website. As I was saying, this website tries to be more than a presentation card, also more than just a tool. There you can find all fundamental information around the partnership, and also you can find all research material produced under the partnership. Well, I'm going to focus on 3 research focused snapshots. So I'm sharing with you 3 research focused snapshots of our website. Next slide, please. Thanks. So I'm starting with interactive map that displays 2 important research projects that you have already hear about in this session, the legal framework analysis and the mapping. This is a very important page in our website from the very beginning, and also it's a good example of joint collaboration between the research and the communications teams together with the developer of the website to create it. We work together to make it real. Despite all the difficulties we've had in the process, we are very happy with the results, and I think it's a user-friendly, nice, comprehensive page, and it's actually one of the most visited, it's the most visited sections on our website, so a very successful one. Next slide, please. Thanks. So here I wanted just to highlight the resources page. There you can find all publications and videos produced under the partnership. You can also filter by region. You can filter by type of content to make your search more accurate. Next slide, please. And finally, I also wanted to present with you, actually I'm presenting it for the first time. It's a very new section. Take it as a foretaste. This section basically presents the aroundtheworld.coop project, which is a project. It consists of a series of short documentary films produced by aroundtheworld.coop together with Cops for Deaf. For this project, the couple, Sara Vicari and Andrea Mancori, well, we heard, we could, in the previous section of the event, we could talk with Cecile Berenguer. She's also a member of Around the World. But the filmmakers are Sara Vicari and Andrea Mancori, and the founders of this cooperative. They travel around the world for 1 year, documenting different cooperatives, making a difference at local level through collective action. You can, so in this new section, you can find all videos produced under this project, and something new that you can also find there. It's a collection of briefs that complement these videos and offer a more analytical approach of each case study. So, well, I hope we can officially launch this page in the upcoming weeks. So please keep posted. So follow us on social media, yeah, and to keep posted. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Ines. The website is great and very user-friendly. We hope that cooperators around the world and our participants today make best use of it. And well, we all just saw the 9 greatest hits of a research. These are really foundational in one sense. And looking ahead, it seems that the future of cooperatives vis-a-vis research is bright in all dimensions. My colleague Carlos here will be talking about our latest research piece on the environment. Over to you, Carlos.
Thank you, Simran. I'm just gonna give a second for the interpreter to switch. Sí, muchas gracias, Simran. Y justamente como en la mayoría de discos, vamos a cerrar con una nota alta, con un buen cierre, y es nuestro más reciente hit, nuestra más reciente investigación, que es la cooperación para la transición a una economía verde. ¿Podemos pasar, Melvin? Gracias. Esta es justamente la portada, que quedó un poquito cortada, pero así es como van a poder encontrar la publicación dentro del sitio de recursos, dentro de la página web de copsfurther.com. Siguiente, Melvin. Ok, la publicación en sí, ¿por qué nos fuimos hacia este tema? Si hemos estado pendientes de las noticias, justamente en los últimos días salió un tema muy preocupante, y es que no estamos alcanzando nuestras metas climáticas que estaban establecidas para 2030. Entonces, hemos identificado que las cooperativas sí están haciendo un gran esfuerzo para alcanzar las metas climáticas, pero en muchos casos no se están visibilizando de la mejor manera. Es por esto que elegimos este tema, para demostrar con pocos casos de éxito cómo es que las cooperativas están trabajando dicha temática. El cómo fue que trabajamos la investigación, pues bueno, fue una investigación global en la cual cada una de las regiones propuso casos de éxito de cooperativas en diferentes temáticas del clima. Por ejemplo, tenemos cooperativas de producción energética, cooperativas forestales, cooperativas de vivienda, etc. Y lo que se hizo fue todo un marco teórico, y se desarrollaron los casos de éxitos para obtener una serie de conclusiones muy interesantes. Sin embargo, aunque todos hablamos inglés, español, algunos inclusive francés, hay un idioma común que se está trabajando a nivel mundial, y son los ODS o SDGs. En este caso, quisimos utilizar ese idioma común para demostrar de manera cualitativa ese trabajo que están realizando las cooperativas. Entonces, en cada uno de esos casos de éxito que desarrollamos dentro de la investigación, mostramos cuáles son los ODS que está impactando directamente dicha iniciativa de manera positiva. Para poner nada más 2 ejemplos sobre la mesa, tenemos Metsalito Group, una cooperativa de Finlandia, una cooperativa forestal muy interesante, porque es una cooperativa que se dedica a la extracción de madera, pero sin embargo, lo hacen de una manera sostenible, amigable con el ambiente. Entonces, en muchos casos vemos muchas corporaciones no cooperativas que hacen un uso irracional del recurso maderero. En este caso, la cooperativa le da toda una gestión correcta a sus recursos forestales para que haya una renovación de esos bosques que ellos mismos están extrayendo. Entonces, se da un uso de los recursos de manera sostenible. Y de igual manera tenemos, por ejemplo, el caso de Copelesca en Costa Rica. Soy costarricense, entonces, y justamente de la región donde es Copelesca, y con mucho orgullo, el país produce un 99% de su energía requerida a partir de fuentes renovables. Y una de esas cooperativas que más aporta a este porcentaje es Copelesca, a través de producción, a través de plantas hidroeléctricas. Además compró prácticamente toda una montaña que estaba siendo deforestada, la está reforestando, que es justamente donde se extrae el agua potable para más de 50,000 personas en esa región. Entonces, la cooperativa no solo se dedica a la producción de electricidad sostenible, sino también le da un valor agregado a través de la conservación de las fuentes de agua potable. ¿Qué hemos aprendido? Pues bueno, muchísimo. En África, por ejemplo, aprendimos de una cooperativa que utiliza recursos que en otros casos se desechan, los utiliza como materia prima para construir casas. Tenemos también lo que es la participación juvenil en Asia-Pacífico. Pudimos descubrir que no solo las cooperativas que se dedican a áreas productivas, sino también inclusive cooperativas financieras con proyectos de reforestación, de manejo de desechos, etcétera. Entonces, inclusive las cooperativas están saliendo más allá de su zona operativa, sino que también están incluyendo nuevos proyectos que se salen totalmente de su enfoque de negocios con el fin de ayudar al medio ambiente. Entonces, considerablemente las cooperativas están realizando un esfuerzo muy grande para que logremos esos objetivos climáticos que se han establecido. Simplemente, en muchos casos, lo que necesitamos es empezar a visibilizarlos, porque en las Américas tenemos una expresión de que las cooperativas hacen mucho, pero no visibilizamos nada. Entonces, debemos darle un cambio a eso y empezar a mostrar el amplio trabajo que hacen las cooperativas en materia climática. Muchas gracias, Imren.
Well, thank you, Carlos, and thanks a lot to all my friends here for the wonderful presentation. Let's begin with our next segment where we can discuss in detail how we can build on this vast knowledge on cooperatives. So I request all the panelists that we have today to kindly switch on your cameras as well as your mics. And for the audience, we will be taking up a few questions for the panelists first, and then we will have an interactive session with you. So please feel free to raise your hand through chat or post your questions and comments in the chat. You may switch on your mic to ask questions or share your comments as well. So I think we have, in the last 5.5 years, we've developed really strong research frameworks and tools, specifically related to the legal frameworks, as well as mapping key cooperative statistics. So this question goes to my colleagues, 3 of them who are here. How do you think we can use these tools? How do you think our ICA members can use these tools? Anyone who wants to jump in?
I can jump in. I really welcome comments from the floor as well. If people just want to jump in, please do. Just unmute and let us know what you think. I mean, we heard a bit from Marlene actually just earlier on this, some of the information that we've produced so far, I think it's a good foundation upon which we can try to build something. There's good examples and best practice case studies in some of the publications, and the mapping in the LFA is giving you really an overview of, in a particular country that we've managed to cover, what is there. And I think that's useful because I think it can facilitate also cooperation between some of the potential member organizations who are active in those countries. And again, it's also about hopefully providing a bit of a basis for those organizations who maybe want to do some cooperative advocacy or to gain funding as well through partners. It can be a good source for information sharing. And again, like I would emphasize the emphasis on comparability, so to be able to reach out and say, okay, what's going on there? Can we learn from this? Can it be useful for us in our work as well? And we're actually going to hopefully look at this going forward in collaboration with an organization called OCDC, who are active in the States, to do a little bit of a mapping at the international level of cooperative development organizations who are active, and what they are doing and what kind of projects are going on. And the whole idea here is to try to put things on the map and facilitate, you know, what isn't there already, what can we do with it. And where it comes to the legal side, hopefully we have a basis now upon which we can also monitor the changes that are happening and try to keep the platform that we've built updated. I think that's really going to be quite important because the legal frame could change quite fast. It's something that we have seen. So one key challenge for us is probably how we can keep that updated going forward and keep the information relevant for the people there. So I won't talk more than that. Thank you, Simran.
Thanks, Jeffrey. And colleagues who want to share further thoughts on this, maybe you can put in your comments in the chat. In the interest of time, I would now want to move on to Sarah and Amanda, for they in their presentation mentioned a very interesting thing about collaborative cooperative research. And you've been our very close partners in some of our research assignments. So what, according to you, makes a good cooperative research? Between Sarah and Amanda, we would love to hear from both of you, actually.
Okay, well, I'll just start off, Sarah. I think it's like when we talk about cooperative research, we often talk about like there's research on cooperatives, but then there's also research carried out cooperatively. And I think it's what's really nice about what we've done as a group is that we've cooperated on cooperative research. So we've you know, cooperative organizations working together to, you know, shine a light on the cooperative difference. And I mean, from my perspective, working on the ground and having worked in different settings to carry out research, is that working with these particular partners on this research in this way has been different because there's less sort of ego involved from the different partners and organizations. And because a lot of academia nowadays is set up to be quite competitive. And I think that what we managed to do in our relationships with the partners was to create a really peer-to-peer group where we all took responsibilities for different areas of the research. And we all kind of, you know, worked really, really well and came up with systems and processes that worked really well for everybody. And it was really done in that sort of true spirit of, you know, solidarity, cooperation amongst cooperatives. So using the cooperative values and principles as well to sort of, you know, create and strengthen the relationship we had while we were carrying out the research. And I think because everyone had the key goal of really being able to demonstrate the cooperative difference. And so, you know, everyone's really, really focused on that as an end result rather than any sort of personal aggrandizement for themselves or their organization. So I just passed to Sarah to add anything to that.
No, that was great, Amanda. That was really, yeah. I mean, and that's also what the college is about, really. It's using the cooperative values and principles in our practice as well. So, you know, and that's all what we're always trying to do. It's not always easy, you know, but actually just trying to, always live by what we talk about, really. So, and it's been a really good example of us doing that. it also kind of, one of the things about collaborative research for the college, you know, we're a small organisation, so what has been, you know, it's been playing to our strengths, but also then, you know, seeing all the diverse kind of strengths across the other organisations, which are different, you know, so we're part of a jigsaw really. So we're good at this, you know, and actually, you know, we work in this area, you're good at that, you work in that, and actually how we do that, keeping the kind of tracks analogy, how we do the dance really collaboratively, really. So and that's been a really good thing for us. And yeah, just to bang on about that point that Amanda's really emphasised, really, is that, you know, it's just capturing the collective learning as well, you know. So I know the college, we've been really, there's been so many insights and so many kind of new ideas that have come out of the research, and so for us at the college, it's going to actually, how do we translate that into learning, and how do we integrate that into just further knowledge really as well. So it's been, there's so many benefits of collaborative research, but as Amanda, you know, said, you know, it requires a level of humility in terms of our ego as an organisations, and as our, you know, and just putting that outside and just focusing on the rich work. So thanks, Imran.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Amanda. And I just want to make a mention here. Our colleague from Australia, Dr. Sidzil Grimstad, is here. And she is from Australia, and it's past 12 there already. So I think what we're talking about, cooperation and just being there with each other, I think hats off to you, Dr. Grimstad, for being here, and thank you. Moving forward, and I would relate this, that, you know, between units, cooperation is very much needed. So my next question is actually for Ines here. Ines, your experience has been about, you know, showcasing the cooperative impact through various creative means. Would you like to share some thoughts on what was your experience in the last 5.5 years?
Thanks, Imran. My experience in collaboration with research, you mean, and in communicating about the impact of COPs, no? Basically, something very fundamental here. It's when you talk about it, it's having facts, no? Basing communication also on facts, and for this, research is fundamental. And all research content is providing a lot of very valuable content, information to set the ground for effective communication, of course. And also something very, very useful that I found in all these researches have been all the case studies, which also provide tangible examples, no, of what we are talking about. It's not about, so we are not only talking about theory, but we are showing the real examples from the ground. No? So and it links to storytelling, which is also a fundamental aspect in communication. So these two elements have supported a lot to comes from a research perspective. From research.
Right. And if it weren't for you, we wouldn't be visible anyway. So thank you so much for all your efforts and hard work. Let's move on and actually discuss how we can build on this foundation that we have created. And I would like to pose this question to both our panelists as well as the audience here, because most of us here in the audience are experts and researchers as well as cooperators. So how do you think we can build upon the foundations of what we already have? Maybe I'll just request Melvin to kick off this discussion, and anyone from the audience who wants to jump in, please feel free.
I think just we've started some of this work, but in general, like I think we mentioned earlier, all of this research work and is geared towards promoting, like we want it to affect like policy formulation, for example, and also the advocacy work done within the movement and the cooperative development in general. So for me, what I would say going forward is for us to continue like making significant influence in this. And like Jeff mentioned earlier, like for all of this research work not to just be there on the shelves.
Okay. Anyone, any other panelists who would want to comment on this? How can we, build on the foundation? All right. Anyone from the audience who would want to share his or her thoughts? Yes, Dr.
Yeah, hello, everybody. It's been really nice to hear about COP for development and all the activities you've been up to all these years. And I'm followed in a way from a distance, I guess, but I've met you, encountered you occasionally. I think it's really useful, as Ines also talked about, to have more data and to know more about what we are talking about when it comes to the cooperative sector. But one thing that I really think is very, very important is the work that you've done among youth and also peacekeeping. Those two elements for me is really essential, especially when it comes to youth. And I wanted to challenge you to do you have examples? Do you have like, what are the best examples of just say recruiting more young people into the co-op sector?
Actually, our research report does cover a lot of great examples, all 4 regions. Basically, those examples tell us how cooperatives are involving youth in the management, in the governance, as well as through CSR activities. So maybe we can share the report with you and share some specific examples.
I find in Australia, at least, that there's a tremendous lack of knowledge about the cooperative model in general, and specifically among young people. So,
well, you are not alone.
No, that's what I think I know.
Our research very blatantly highlights this, that there is a dearth of knowledge, and hopefully in times to come, we'll overcome that. All right, we do have a few hands raised, but before I take your comments or queries, I want to discuss one very important thing, for which I invite Carlos. Carlos, what do you think could be potential topics for future research within the co-op movement?
Gracias, Simran. Dentro de esas temáticas, considero que es muy importante, creo que di una pista en mi presentación inicial, el tema de política pública. Ya investigamos sobre los marcos legales como tal, pero también considero que deberíamos investigar cómo la política pública va guiando el trabajo que van realizando las cooperativas como tal. Yo considero que los marcos legales dan ese punto de partida a las cooperativas, pero la política pública termina siendo ese camino por el cual las cooperativas pueden ir jugando, o la política pública marca esa cancha dentro de la cual las políticas pueden jugar. También me parece sumamente importante toda la reacción que han tenido las cooperativas ante el COVID-19 desde 2 aspectos. El primero, desde un aspecto social, cómo las cooperativas han aportado en ese proceso de reconstrucción social, porque en realidad, aparte de la crisis económica, hemos tenido una crisis social bastante aguda. Entonces me parece muy interesante que podamos identificar cómo desde los principios y valores del cooperativismo se ha desarrollado ese proceso de reconstrucción social. Asimismo, dentro de esa temática también me parece sumamente importante toda la colaboración que han realizado las cooperativas para la reconstrucción económica, porque también la crisis económica fue muy fuerte. Desde cooperativas financieras que pararon la cobranza de los créditos que tenían o redujeron sus tasas de interés con fondos no reembolsables, cooperativas de abastecimiento que ofrecían alimentos gratuitos a familias afectadas, que inclusive le iban a dejar alimentos a familias con COVID que no podían salir de sus hogares, iban y le entregaban los alimentos en las puertas de sus hogares, etcétera. Ha habido todo un proceso que han realizado las cooperativas en que es sumamente interesante de investigar. Y cierro con un tercer tema que es cómo las cooperativas se han ido adaptando a los procesos de digitalización. Creo que es un tema que va a ir en emergencia dentro de los diferentes sectores en estos años, entonces creo que por ahí las cooperativas no nos deberíamos quedar atrás y presentar un poco lo que hemos venido trabajando en tema de digitalización. Gracias, Imren.
Thanks, Carlos. Indeed, the point on policy is very important here. And I don't think that friend of ours from Nepal is still here, but he had mentioned about agriculture crops. So I just want to say, like, the research done by Africa Office on ICT, I mean, any research need not be on one particular sector. Themes like ICT, they cut across. Peace also cut, they cut across. So I think we can take relevant insights and learnings from any theme, as a matter of fact. And I saw that our colleague Fernando from the Americas office, I guess, had raised his hand before. Welcome, Fernando. Please unmute yourself.
Gracias, Imren. Saludos para todos, un gusto, y para todas es un gusto verlos y compartir con ustedes. Quería hacer una referencia a la importancia no solo de la investigación, sino también de la gestión del conocimiento generado. Hacían una pregunta de cómo incluir al joven, y el joven hoy creo que se puede involucrar de manera muy interesante a partir de compartir las experiencias y las buenas prácticas. El cómo visibilizar lo que estamos haciendo en cada uno de nuestros países, de nuestros continentes, de nuestros hogares, desde lo pequeño hasta lo gigante, es un actor motivador de la acción cooperativa. Entonces, poner encima de la mesa la importancia de una comunicación eficiente, como lo ha mostrado Inés, pero también de la construcción a partir del ejemplo. El sector cooperativo está lleno a nivel mundial de ejemplos extraordinarios que movilizarían a los jóvenes si conocieran los mismos. La experiencia que ustedes han planteado en la investigación de construcción de paz es central dentro de la acción cooperativa. La acción cooperativa en todo el mundo está desarrollada en propiciar espacios de articulación, de dar respuesta, de generar condiciones. La respuesta del cooperativismo frente a la pandemia, con construcción de múltiples hospitales en distintos puntos del mundo, la atención del hambre, la reducción de los excedentes para mantener los puestos de trabajo, son elementos motivadores para los actores jóvenes, adultos y mayores si conocieran nuestra acción. Producir conocimiento es extraordinario. Producir conocimiento de manera colaborativa es enriquecedor. Compartir el conocimiento generado por nuestras organizaciones es central, considero, para el fortalecimiento del sector. Si no, nos podemos quedar, como dice nuestro presidente Ariel Huarco, contándonos el cuento entre nosotros. Y nosotros ya estamos convencidos. Necesitamos que el cuento lo conozcan los demás, que sepan que nosotros realmente tenemos una economía centrada en las personas. Gracias.
Right. I couldn't agree more, Fernando. And thank you very much for that important take on producing knowledge, but also communicating it to the right people regularly, in fact. I would now like to call upon Mr. Raymond, who has his hand raised.
Muchas gracias.
So would you be speaking?
Me parece que no podría sino felicitar a todos los que se han organizado este evento por la pluralidad que representa y por habernos presentado a un grupo de gente joven que está involucrada en la continuación del cooperativismo. quiero pedir que si se busca desarrollar un tema, que es el tema que nos identifica, debemos también incorporar el tema de la ética. Hoy día, las cooperativas y todas las empresas se conocen por sus características. Y características, en una palabra común, es ética. Éticos significa característica. Por ahí nos conocen. Conocemos a cada uno de ustedes porque lleva anteojos, porque tiene la nariz larga o corta, porque su boca es muy bonita. La cooperativa se conoce por la ética. Y los ejemplos que aquí se han dado son los ejemplos de la ética. Y hoy día la ética se construye mediante la ética discursiva. En el mundo desarrollada por Apple y otros. Y esa ética la tenemos que construir todos. Los principios éticos no los recibimos por influencia superior. La ética la construimos nosotros de acuerdo a las características nuestras y de nuestro entorno. La ética no la podemos construir solo las cooperativas, la ética cooperativa. Tenemos que construirla con todos los que son afectados por nuestras actuaciones. Esa es la ética que nos van a reconocer. Esa es la ética que tenemos que construir entre todos para el futuro. Eso quería decir. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. That was indeed very inspiring. Thanks once again for being here and sharing your words of wisdom. I would now like to call upon Horatio. I'm not sure if that is the correct pronunciation, but you had your hand raised for a while. Yes.
Buen día desde Colombia. Quería hacer un aporte sobre la pregunta que cómo construir sobre lo que ya está. Y quería manifestar que, por ejemplo, en procesos de investigación que se realizan en Colombia, especialmente en un proyecto que estamos haciendo en la Universidad Cooperativa de Colombia, estamos trabajando el concepto de territorio solidario. Territorios solidarios donde hay integración de todos los actores y comunidades que convergen en una territorialidad. Hoy en día, Colombia tiene una particularidad que es que estamos en un proceso de posconflicto y aún tenemos esa problemática de que no logramos integrar a todos nuestros actores, etcétera. Por lo tanto, hemos encontrado en estos procesos de investigación que, por ejemplo, en caso de políticas públicas, el Estado es el más alejado de querer integrarse a un territorio solidario, en el sentido de que, si bien es cierto, la filosofía cooperativa en el mundo se basa en principios y valores, en el caso colombiano hay una dispersión normativa que un poco dificulta el quehacer del cooperativismo y de la economía solidaria y social en los territorios, porque le coloca trabas y le coloca muchas problemáticas. Eso hemos encontrado nosotros en muchos procesos de investigación que se hacen y estamos, como les digo, fomentando el concepto de territorios solidarios, que es una concepción de integraciones, de circuitos económicos solidarios y de todos aquellos aspectos que convergen en una territorialidad que busca precisamente el mejoramiento de la calidad de vida, por lo menos de los más vulnerables y en especial de aquellos que estuvieron en zonas de conflicto. Y estamos trabajando en ello. Entonces, una de las reflexiones es que los gobiernos desde lo local o lo nacional deben empoderarse un poco más de qué es la economía solidaria y sensibilizarse empezando por ellos, porque la comunidad, creo que lo decía Ramón, la comunidad lo sabe, tenemos ética. Incluso lo conocemos, pero el gobierno también debe empoderarse un poco más de esto para que el proceso fluya. Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you very much, Horatio. If you don't mind, could you please share some links on this solidarity thing in the context of post-conflict that you were just speaking about, maybe in the chat box? And indeed, in the emerging social and solidarity economy context, I think it is very relevant that co-ops make themselves visible and take a lead to work together with other SSC actors, so that, you know, we are just not restricted to ourselves, but we establish this solidarity economy. And that's how I think collectively and at a magnitudinal level, our visibility will be enhanced, and the governments will automatically start recognizing us if we engage with other SSC actors and not just be limited to ourselves. Well, thank you for that note. And I would now like to call upon our last participant who had her hand raised, Myriam, if you are still around. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name correctly. Myriam.
It's Miriam Lozano. Miriam, ¿tenías una pregunta?
All right, I guess she's not around, maybe.
Sí, muy buenos días.
You're here.
Sí, muy buenos días. Habla Miriam. Infortunadamente mi cámara no está funcionando muy bien. Vamos a ver si me puedo ubicar. Sí, me ubico un poquito. Yo había planteado, muy buenos días para todos ustedes. Yo había planteado algo supremamente importante desde mi punto de vista. Hace promedio 30 años trabajo con el sector cooperativo en consultoría, en capacitación, en formación, y soy una convencida de que la filosofía, nuestra doctrina, nos da un aprendizaje y una sensibilidad humana de sentir a la otra persona, de percibirla con sus deberes y percibirla con sus derechos. Y en esa ser solidario y practicar la ayuda mutua, nos integramos en un colectivo de familia, de hermanaje. Eso es lo que he visionado durante estos 30 años de estar trabajando con el sector cooperativo, tanto en la academia como en la práctica. Pero estoy viendo un fenómeno muy particular que es el de los jóvenes. Aquí está 30 años, cooperativas de 50, cooperativas de 45 años, pero se nos está envejeciendo un poco esa base social. Y entonces ingresan personas nuevas, pero con un afán de los servicios, con poca a los aprendizajes, a esa transformación social que desde nuestra doctrina hacemos y queremos hacer con la sociedad. Vemos una sociedad de jóvenes que proclaman derechos, pero se olvidan de los límites, de los deberes. Y entonces ahí pienso yo que nuestra doctrina está llamada a extenderse, a no quedarse solamente interna en nuestras empresas, en nuestra academia, en nuestros conversatorios, en diseñar nuevos modelos de investigación y de aprendizaje, sino salir, convocar comunidad, mostrarnos realmente de lo que nosotros estamos convencidos y de lo que estamos haciendo. Entonces, a mí me parece, desde mi punto de vista, importantísimo estos eventos, pero mi inquietud es, ¿cómo trascendemos? ¿Cómo vamos más allá? Porque nuestra historia cooperativa no se está haciendo hoy. Nuestra historia cooperativa tiene que dejar unas huellas para marcar el futuro. Ese es el impacto mayor. ¿Cómo convocamos, por ejemplo, en el caso de los gobiernos, hemos hablado de política importante, pero ¿cómo hacemos tanto para poder llegar donde debemos llegar y que en el futuro se hable de lo que realmente somos, transformadores de una sociedad a partir de la solidaridad, a partir de la ayuda mutua, a partir de la colaboración, a partir de esa sensibilidad humana que tenemos? Muchas gracias, un abrazo muy especial a todos ustedes, muchas gracias por escucharme y extraordinario evento que hemos tenido el día de hoy. Muchas gracias.
Well, thanks to you for presenting your views. And I completely agree with you that it's difficult to showcase yourself. And you asked a lot of good questions. So how do we do this? How do we do that? One key thing to remember is that since every problem is not a nail, every solution cannot be a hammer. And like in conflict resolution and conflict transformation approaches, people adopt, advocates adopt multilateral processes, multi-track processes. I think similarly in the co-op movement, we need to adopt a multi-track process and not just top-down or bottom-up. And I go back to what Dr. Amanda was mentioning earlier about teaching. You know, even if the fact that even if we go out and start publicizing co-ops, young people or even people who are in middle age may not value it that much. Why? Because we are not taught cooperation from a very child age. Teachers don't know what cooperation is. So I think it's sort of part of a DNA to not cooperate anymore. And we keep, you know, we are bred as individuals, you know, my life, my job, my income, my family, nothing to do with community. So the sense of communal is sort of missing. And I think it doesn't come overnight. It has to be slowly ingrained in people's psyche. And that's what we have to do. And that's where we have to start. I also want to underline what my colleague Fernando had mentioned, that co-ops are not just about revenues and let's say how much turnovers they bring in. They are also about what they do for people. So he mentioned about COVID-19, and I think some other person here mentioned about cooperative initiatives during crisis or pandemic. So I think we need to really highlight that we are not selfish, and we are in fact very selfless. And when it comes to it, we are right out there for everybody, our members as well as the outside. And I'm not just being idealistic here. That's what the DNA of cooperatives is, and that story needs to come out. So Ines, people like Ines, they are there to help us out, and that is one form of communication. But I think teaching, research, policy, advocacy, these are all, you know, multilateral ways through which we need to sort of advocate more about co-ops. And I see some new people are joining in, but I'm afraid that we have come close to the 90-minute session. I think people here are quite eager to engage in further discussions. Jeffrey, if you allow me, maybe we can keep the floor open for another 5 minutes in case someone wants to say something, because I enjoy Zoom, but I don't like when meetings get cut. Yeah, you know, we are interrupted because you can sense that people want to engage. So if anyone wants to engage, please feel free. This is now an open forum. You can also engage with each other if you like.
Thanks, Simran. For me, this is a very, very rich and very, very interesting discussion. I think it's not actually very often that we have these chances just to share a little bit about what we think beyond the everyday activities working in the core movement. And I also reflect on some of the things that have been said here, and wondering also how much a historical perspective to some research may also be quite useful in looking at how the I mean, when we think about where we sit today in terms of the social solidarity economy, and also some of the competition that cooperatives face from the corporate social responsibility world, and the fact that we have a lot of greenwashing in the corporate arena that can blur a little bit the lines between what cooperatives are doing actually in a very positive way through their structural characteristics. Just to wonder whether to look also at some historical research as to where the cooperative movement was positioned back then in terms of labor movement struggles and other things, to look at some of the issues that face us today, climate change and labor difficulties even today, and kind of digitalization and these things, and where we actually sit on these things. And that's just one reflection that I had in this discussion.
Thanks, Jeffrey. I sort of differ here. If I can openly differ, I think it is great to reminisce the past, but we also need to sort of move ahead with times, and you know how the cooperative movement was back in times, given the past context. That context may or may not be true now. So I think we need to revamp ourselves a bit, but that's just my personal take. Sorry to publicly, but I don't disagree with you. I differ. I don't disagree. All right. Anybody else?
I think I agree with Jeffrey and Simran in a way about the importance of history, because it's very different histories, isn't it, of cooperative movements when you come from Europe and when you are in India or even in a colony like Australia. So, you know, it develops a whole other picture, you know, and what type of reforms you need in the different countries' movements, maybe. The other comment I wanted to make was this very important issue, Simran, that you mentioned about collaboration and learning how to collaborate. I think from my little experience on doing cooperative research here in Australia and teaching cooperatives, that has been maybe the most powerful thing, that we try to work collaboratively. And it's actually really mind-blowing once you start doing that. It's been very enlightening, I think, actually. When we meet with the peak body and dairy co-ops and farmers and so on, they say, oh, the atmosphere here is different to when we are out in the kind of the hard business world. Here, the atmosphere is different and we actually help each other. So it's been, very interesting. And also our MBA students who have taken some of our courses, they say, oh, this is very different, you know, because we stress collaboration and try to push people to collaborate without looking at the marks and the results, in a sense. Yeah, but it's a practice that we have to learn and be very aware of, I think.
Yeah, I think the room, thank you so much, Dr. Sidzil. Also, I'm very much aware that a room might be diverse, for I know Ines is here and she might be wondering, oh God, these research people are just going on and on. So in the interest of a diverse audience, one last time, if anyone has any last comment or query.
Creo que lo que dice Simran y lo que dice Jeffrey es complementario. Para poder mirar el futuro, tenemos que saber qué pasó. Pero no podemos con el futuro proyectar la cooperativa con el pasado, proyectar la cooperativa del futuro. Hace 30 años atrás no había problema en la ciencia, en la neurociencia, ni había problema con la cibernética, no había. entonces los problemas que se vienen encima son distintos. Yo aprendí a leer y a escribir con un lápiz de grafito y con el ABC. Hoy día los niños nacen con el computador en la mano. Y la cooperativa del futuro es para responder a los niños que nacen con el computador en la mano. Y eso es lo que ustedes están creando, los jóvenes que están trabajando en esto, y por eso los apoyo a que sigan en esa línea, descubriendo y destruyendo para construir. Destruyendo, construyendo. Sobre esa ruina construir. Porque si quieren continuar con lo que nosotros hacíamos hace 50 o 58 años que comencé a trabajar, por Dios, no van a llegar a la esquina. Hoy día tienen que avanzar con la computación. Hoy día es necesario que el Internet llegue al medio del campo del café, en el medio del cerro de Colombia o en el último rincón de la India. Ese es el progreso que tiene que llevar la cooperativa. No podemos ir con un arado a enseñarles a producir. Hay que llevarles la ciencia, hay que llevarles el conocimiento, porque como aquí dijeron hace un rato, conocer es poder. Y yo los felicito por eso. Pero creo que tanto lo que dijo Jeffrey como lo que dijo Simran es complementario y necesario.
Thank you so much, Raymond. And on that note, and with deeper conviction and consensus to build a better future for co-ops, I think we should now call this meeting to a close. Personally speaking, it was a great success. We always welcome open discussions, heart-to-heart conversations, for we believe, I guess it's just researchers who believe that presentations are good, but these discussions that come from the bottom of the heart are organic. And that's what helps us smile at the end of the day, I guess. So thank you everybody for joining us. Very thanks to Amanda for joining us today. Sarah has left already. Thank you so much, Ines. Thanks, Melvin, Carlos, and Jeffrey, the main person who coordinated this session for us. Thanks, Fernando, for joining us. Thanks, Raymond, Dr. Sidzel, Horatio, and all others who are here, still here. I know for some of you it's quite late at night. Thank you. Take care. Stay safe. Get yourself vaccinated if you haven't already.